China's C929 airplane just crushed Boeing and Airbus after its 12,000-kilometer range reveal, and suddenly, the aviation kings don't look so royal anymore. For years, everyone joked that China could never pull off a real wide-body jet until the plane showed up and flew halfway across the planet. Back in 2015, China and Russia thought they'd make the perfect tag team for a new wide-body jet. They called it the CR-929, tossed in $2 billion, and divided the chores. Russia would flex its aerospace muscles with aerodynamics and materials, while China would foot the bill and line up its giant factories to build the thing. On paper, it looked like the ultimate partnership, a marriage of brains and muscle. But as always, reality doesn't like happy endings. By 2021, the Ukraine war flipped the whole script. Russian engineers were suddenly yanked away and dumped into defense projects. Moscow dragged its feet on commitments while Shanghai was racing ahead with its own milestones. The whispers started that maybe Russia wasn't pulling its weight at all. Then came 2022, and Russia walked away completely. Most countries would panic if half their team stormed off mid-project, but not China. They shrugged, slapped a new name on it, called it the C929, and decided to finish the job alone. What everyone expected to collapse in flames became the very moment China turned the tables on global aviation. Turns out when Russia left the party, China didn't just keep the lights on, they built a whole new house. Now let's talk about the beast itself, because the C929 isn't a sidekick jet, it's designed to make Boeing and Airbus choke on their champagne. This wide-body beauty can pack in 280 passengers and then cruise across 12,000 kilometers without breaking a sweat. We're talking Beijing to New York or Shanghai to London non-stop. That's triple the range of the little C919 and almost double its passenger load. This isn't some copy-paste version of a smaller plane. This is China showing it can go toe-to-toe with the titans of aviation. What makes it even juicier is how it stacks up against the so-called kings of the sky. The Boeing 787 and Airbus A350 have been hogging the spotlight for years, but the C929 quietly outclasses them in wingspan and even cabin width. Passengers get more elbow room while China gets bragging rights. For years, Western experts sneered that China could never build a true wide-body jet, claiming the C929 was nothing more than a fattened C919. Then, the specs dropped and the laughter died. Suddenly, the paper airplane turned into a monster that made industry veterans sit up and sweat. The joke used to be that China copies everything. Now the joke is on Boeing and Airbus, because this time they might have been out-engineered. The C929 is not just another airplane with a shiny paint job. It's loaded with technology that made even seasoned engineers scratch their heads. This jet carries 10 fully developed core systems covering avionics, hydraulics, navigation, communications, and wing tech. Then there's the materials science twist. The body of the C929 is built with a mix of 15% titanium and more than 50% carbon fiber composites. For comparison, its little brother, the C919, only managed around 12%. That massive leap doesn't just make the C929 lighter, it makes it tougher and far more efficient. This isn't China catching up, it's China skipping a few chapters and writing their own textbook. It's not just the frame and systems either. The C929 was pieced together with a staggering 2.2 million components and tested with 3,500 different setups. That level of preparation screams obsession, and in aviation, obsession usually wins. Add in a real-time flight monitoring system, something most competitors haven't rolled out at this scale, and you start to see a jet that's practically self-aware. Every bump, every shift in the air, the aircraft knows it and adjusts on the fly. The cabin gets its own futuristic treatment too. Smart lighting adjusts with the rhythm of the flight, seats move with more flexibility, and the design focuses on making long-haul trips feel less like punishment. But the real headline stealer is the CJ2000 engine. This thing is entirely homegrown. No begging for American or French engines this time. It pushes out 35 tons of thrust, putting it ahead of Boeing 787's celebrated GEnx at 33 tons. The size is a beast on its own, with a fan diameter of 3 meters and a total height of 4.55 meters, which makes it bigger and bolder than the Dreamliner's power plant. More thrust, less fuel burn, and a design that promises cheaper and greener flights? That's the trifecta every airline wants. The engine isn't fully certified yet, with test flights planned for 2029, but the writing is on the wall. If the CJ2000 performs as promised, China will finally snap its chains to Western engine makers for good. The day that engine passes certification is the day the old aviation order starts shaking on its foundations. Boeing and Airbus have spent decades polishing their crowns, convinced that no one could touch their grip on the skies. Then, China rolled out the C929 and quietly added a detail that hits harder than any press release: the cabin width clocks in at 5.5 meters, which makes both the Boeing 787 and the Airbus AI350 look a little cramped at 5.28 and 5.34. That difference may sound small on paper, but in the air it means passengers stretch their legs, airlines squeeze in smarter layouts, and suddenly, the premium experience of the West's best starts looking second-rate. Comfort sells, and China just gave the world more of it. The sting doesn't stop there. Pricing has always been Beijing's favorite weapon, and the C929 follows the same script. China knows how to undercut rivals while still rolling out something that holds up in quality. If Boeing and Airbus are charging luxury prices, China is dangling an alternative that lets airlines cut costs and still brag about flying brand new wide-body jets. For airlines balancing razor-thin margins, the choice isn't hard. When the jet with more comfort also comes with a smaller bill, loyalty becomes the first thing to vanish. Add to that the environmental angle. The C929 is built with efficiency in mind, and it aligns neatly with future regulations pushing airlines to go greener. Boeing and Airbus can't laugh this off because governments around the world are tightening rules, and if China's aircraft shows up already compliant, then it becomes the shortcut everyone wants. Airlines don't just avoid fines, they get to show off their eco-friendly upgrades while saving fuel costs. That's not just competition, that's an ambush. For two giants that built their empires on dominance, this is the first time they're staring at a competitor with both political backing and technological teeth. It's not a minor regional jet stealing a few routes, it's a wide-body aircraft aimed right at the heart of the long-haul market. The very space Boeing and Airbus thought they had locked up is being pried open by a player they underestimated for years. The panic button isn't on the dashboard anymore, it's glued to the ceiling. And China isn't treating this as a one-off victory. The C919 is already in service covering domestic and regional routes. The C99 has stepped in as a regional jet, carving out more ground. Now the C929 is flexing as a wide body ready to fly across oceans. And this is only the beginning. Plans for the C939 are already on the table, and whispers about the C949 go even further. By 2049, the centenary of the People's Republic, Beijing wants a supersonic C949 in the sky. That's not a marketing line, that's a deadline written into national ambition. The scary part for the West is that this isn't just about planes. This is about breaking the technology leash that has kept China dependent for decades. Engines, avionics, composites, you name it, China is ticking off the list one by one until there's nothing left to import. The world thought the game was about airplanes, but Beijing is playing for aviation supremacy itself. Boeing and Airbus don't just risk losing customers, they risk losing the monopoly on the future of flight. China's appetite for airplanes is staggering, and the forecast is brutally clear. Over the next 20 years, the country will need more than 9,000 new aircraft. and about 1,000 of those will be wide bodies like the C929. That's not a market, that's an empire. If Boeing and Airbus were counting on China to keep buying their jets, they might want to sit down, because every C929 that rolls out means money that once flowed to Seattle or Toulouse now stays firmly inside Beijing's walls. The day China proves it can mass-produce wide bodies, the duopoly officially dies. And it's not just about feeding its own skies. Once the C929 establishes itself, the real play begins across Asia, Africa, and other developing regions. These are markets where price talks louder than brand loyalty, and where the words affordable wide body sound like a dream come true. Western giants have been selling prestige, but many airlines don't need prestige. They need planes that work, that fly far, and that don't bankrupt them in the process. China can hand them just that. Western media has already started to panic, labeling the C929 a direct threat to Airbus and Boeing's decades of dominance. And they're not wrong. This isn't just another aircraft entering the market. This is a wedge splitting open a monopoly that's been unchallenged for generations. The so-called safe choice is about to feel unsafe because airlines finally have somewhere else to turn. But the bigger picture is even heavier. The rise of the C929 doesn't only signal China's ability to build planes, it signals China's arrival as an aviation superpower. What was once a country known for building everyone else's parts is now aiming to own the whole sky. That shifts geopolitics just as much as it shifts aviation, because the power to build and sell wide bodies is also the power to dictate how and where the world flies. If the C929 pulls this off, Boeing and Airbus aren't just competing for sales, they're fighting for survival. So, do you think the Boeing and Airbus era is finally crashing down? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you want the latest aviation shakeups, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon.